Let me introduce to you our moderator for this evening's discussion. Dr. Helen Hunter has been a pastor of the American African Methodist Episcopal Church for 20 plus years and evolved from pulpit ministry focus to focus on homeless ministry and affordable housing. She has been a board certified chaplain for over 10 years with exposure and training and experience in major faith groups and multiple denominational religions. She has advanced degrees in divinity and theology, which included studies in world religions. Her doctoral thesis focused on the impact of faith religion on AA males' high school academic achievement. Dr. Hunter is married with 3 adult children, 6 grandchildren, and 6 great grandchildren. So happy to have you aboard, Dr. Hunter, and the evening is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so excited and honored to be a part of this faith forum this year. And I'm equally excited to have the participants on board for us. So I'd just like to thank you for coming and then ask that we get right in, cut to the chase. And we'd like to know if you would share with us your life story in regards to your faith. We're looking to hear from you about your faith journey and the experiences that you've had in your faith/religion in your particular faith community. So if each one could introduce yourself. When we begin to talk, we're asking that you take about 7 minutes to share the general aspects of your journey, and then we will open everything up for questions. Does that sound like a plan for everybody? Share your heart. Like we said, no judgment, no criticism, no, we'll ask questions just for information. So who do we start with tonight, Larry? Did you have anyone we should start with first?
Well, why don't we start with Johnny Martin, and then we'll go to Surabhi and to Evanna, and then last but not least, Mr. Grant Williams. Okay.
And may I ask again that you pronounce your name one more time for all of us when you start. So Johnny, I can say that one. If you'll start, we much appreciated.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunter, and thank you, Reverend Fultz. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'm so honored to have been invited for this. I know many of you quite well, and I'm happy to share about my faith journey. It's really a story I love to tell. I tell it as often as I can. Not everybody wants to hear it, so having a group actually ask me to share it in a setting like this is really wonderful. So I am 28 years old. Originally from Chicago, Illinois, but I've been living in Phoenix, Arizona with my family pretty much consistently since I was 13 years old. I was raised non-denominational, evangelical Christian, and I stopped identifying with that around the time that I was in high school. And I always say that this was, I think, partly out of your sort of standard teenage rebellion. I just wanted to have sort of my own identity, find out what I believe for myself, as opposed to just following along with what I'd been told and what I knew my parents believed. Instead of kind of seeking to find something for myself, however, I just rejected the idea of faith entirely at that point. This was around when I was I would say a junior or a senior in high school. I started to tell my friends that I was an atheist. And I just want to say that I have many friends today. I love the interfaith movement. So, I have friends who are non-religious, who are secular humanists. I did not identify that way. I was pretty vehemently anti-religious for a while. So it wasn't until I started at Arizona State University. I needed a humanities credit my first year, and I was a business school student, business major. And I took religions of the world because I thought it would make me a better atheist. I thought that if I could learn about all of these different religions, then when I was talking to somebody, I could basically explain to them, well, this is why what you believe doesn't make sense. However, taking that course was in and of itself a very profound and transformational spiritual experience for me. I found that within a few weeks of taking lessons on different world religions from a professor who specializes in the secular study of religions. To this day, I still don't know her religion who was teaching the course. That's, I think, the sign of a good religious studies professor. But, you know, I really started to feel that, well, these traditions are much deeper than someone who hates religion would have you believe. You know, there's oftentimes a philosophy that runs down to the core of a spiritual tradition that maybe isn't necessarily the focus of a lot of talk or a lot of media or even some practitioners. And so I really started to identify with a lot of different religions and really shifted from being anti-religious to being a sort of curious spiritual seeker. And so just to sort of bring this to a close and to where I am today, I then started to identify for several years as a seeker and a pluralist when somebody would ask, what's your religion? And then I would say, I'm a seeker or a pluralist. And they would say, what is that? I've never heard of that before. And I would try to help people understand that I didn't think it was so important to take just one label when you could value these traditions and beliefs and values that may seem mutually exclusive on some level, but are sacred to these groups of people across time and history. And so that didn't last for too long, because in October of 2014, I was finally invited by my friend. Actually, the night prior, I was invited to the mosque in Tempe, the Tempe Islamic Community Center. I was finally taught how to pray. I sort of knew academically as a student of religion, because that's what my degree is in. But I was taught by a friend who's from Saudi Arabia how to actually pray, how to recite from Quran. And it was just the transformational moment I needed then and there to stop being a pluralist, at least in terms of the label when somebody asks what faith I follow, and to start being honest about my identity as a Muslim. So I am a revert, commonly known, I think, outside of Muslim circles as a convert. And I wasn't raised Muslim. No one else in my family is Muslim, but I really do value and cherish my faith more than just about anything else in my life, even if my focus on it sometimes tends to ebb and flow, as I think it probably does with anybody. It's really what grounds me to a set of values, and really just, it makes me feel a sense of peace. And so I'm eager to share more and happy to answer other questions later on in the program.
Thank you so much for that overview, Johnny. I want to save questions after everyone talks, but I just had a quick one for you. That's okay right now. You said something about spirituality. And how do you describe that? And do you see a difference between spirituality and religion?
This is one of my favorite questions, so thanks for asking that. And I'm really like, I self-identify as a nerd when it comes to world religions and like the study of religion, interfaith in general. So I'm going to try not to go on with this. I'm going to give you a short and sweet answer. But there's actually a famous religious studies scholar, and I don't want to be crude, but was quoted as having said that religion is like really anything explicit. I won't get explicit in my commentary here, but it's like something explicit, and then a lot of times it's hard to define, but you kind of know it when you see it. And that is the case with religion. A lot of times, if you try to give it a definition, someone can usually think of at least one group that we all feel that is a religion, but it didn't fit in your tidy definition that you tried to box it into. Mm-hmm. Spirituality is the same in a lot of ways, but I think even more sort of broad and fluid, and to me, I think of spirituality as that's my direct experience of and relationship with the divine, whereas religion is the community and the history, the tradition, all those other things outside of the soul and God that we tend to think of as sort of adjacent to faith and religion.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, can we go to our next panelist? And I will ask her to pronounce her name again. I know Larry said it for us, Reverend Larry, but if she would pronounce that for us. Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. Hello, everyone. My name is Surabhi. Thank you, Dr. Hunter, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you all and meet so many new people today. But my name is Surabhi. I'm of the Hindu faith. I'm currently a freshman at ASU. I'm a medical studies major. Um, and my journey with religion honestly started with birth, as I was very blessed to be born into my religion. That being said, religion is never linear, I don't think, for anyone. Growing up, I noticed that Hinduism was very intertwined with the Indian culture, at least where I'm from. So I spent a lot of times going into Indian cultural events, and those were often related to my religion. And the best example I can give of this is dancing. I grew up learning Bharatanatyam, which is one of the most popular forms of dance in India. It's the national dance form. It is a very classical form that's driven in technique, but it's also rooted very strongly in Hindu mythology. And growing up dancing, as well as going to Sunday school, I learned a lot of mythology related to the gods. If you've ever read anything about Hinduism, you may have heard of our elephant-headed god, or our value that we may have for cows, and other polytheistic examples of Hinduism. And that's how I grew up when I was younger. Just, it was very surface level, and I really enjoyed learning about the mythology. But as I went into high school, I continued to go to my Sunday school, which in my case is Chinmaya Mission. There are many different Sunday schools and many different philosophies in Hinduism. But through my Sunday school, I was able to go a little bit deeper and more surface level than what I'd previously known about Hinduism. And this is where I learned a lot more about how Hinduism is monotheistic rather than polytheistic, and how it's really philosophy rather than the religion that I thought I was born into. And now I'm currently a freshman in college, and I'm continuing that philosophy. Now that I live away from home, I can say it is difficult to keep up this tradition, especially being surrounded by other people of many different faiths. It's so beautiful getting to learn about all of them, but it's also hard being away from the other people who I typically practice my faith with, especially my parents and my close family and friends. And that's something I'm going and experiencing right now in my religious journey. I also want to add, Johnny, thank you so much for everything you shared about your religion. And you may have noticed that he said that when he was a senior in high school is when he was experiencing some of these religious questions. And that's the stage I am in my life. I just finished my senior year of high school. I am barely finishing up my first semester in college. So with everything I've shared right now, I definitely have a long way to go in my religious journey, and I'm really excited to see what else I'm able to find in Hinduism and see where else it might take me in grounding myself.
Thank you so much. You do have a few more minutes to share. We're giving everybody 7 minutes. So I'll propose to you one quick question that I kind of picked up from your story. You mentioned that several that you studied mythology and gods, and then you added that Hinduism is not polytheistic, that is monotheistic. So can you tell us what that means to you?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't want to speak for all Hindus. I know many people have different interpretations of the religion. The way I've understood the scriptures is that we often present Hinduism as polytheistic because the world and the way this religion and philosophy has come is so complex that it often takes many layers for us to understand. So rather than trying to understand one large monotheistic ideal, we separate it into polytheistic gods with human-like characteristics, physical and emotional, for us to relate with, so that way we can understand the higher purpose and what we're closely connected to. So I can give an example of the god named Krishna, who is one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. And Lord Krishna is very childlike, like very playful, plays a flute, and plays with the gopikas, or the girls his age, loves to eat butter. And these are all things we all relate to as children. Maybe not exactly butter, but finding some food that we love and are always sneaking around our parents to get, whether it be chocolate or any other kind of candy or ice cream. And as a child, we may not understand that there's this larger ideal in the universe that helps govern our choices or helps us through this path in life and how the universe holds itself. So that way, instead, we present the religion as polytheistic so that we can connect better with Krishna, who has these ideals of bravery, courageousness, and being a good son. And that way we have ideas of what we can strive to be our perfect selves and our happiest selves. And while it is monotheistic in that there's the Brahman or this higher ideal in the universe, we can't really picture that in our head. And that's something I learned as I went into high school, and I still can't really imagine this ideal in my head, but I can better understand how all of these polytheistic gods that we split the religion into helps me understand that there's a higher force and a higher purpose above us that we can serve and we can work towards.
That is so, thank you so much for that explanation. We'll move on to our next panelist. And that is what the Baha'i faith, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
There she is. Okay, Evanna.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Same question to you. Your journey, your faith journey. If you could share your experiences, we would be so happy to hear.
Starting off strong, just with our, basic life story. I love to see it. So hi, everyone. My name's Evanna. I'm so happy to be here and meet all of these new faces and people as well. I just love spaces where people are really open to learning from one another, and I'm feeling very open to all of this. That's, already coming from the other panelists. So yeah, I am a member of the Baha'i faith. And so I was born into the Baha'i faith. And the Baha'i faith believes strongly in the idea of progressive revelation. So this is the idea that all religions come from the same God. And this is something that you see a lot. It's not an idea that's brand new to the Baha'i faith. It's talked about in the Quran. It's talked about in the Bible. In a lot of religious texts, it refers to this one God who is bringing different manifestations. And so the Baha'i belief is that the same God has brought different manifestations to earth for the needs of that society during that time. So, we see that everything in the world is constantly progressing, whether it be technology, science, art, clothing, everything is progressing. And so with that, religion also will progress. And so the spiritual laws will remain the same, and the things in terms of the progression of your soul and all of those things remain the same throughout the major world religions. But what changes is some of these societal laws that God has given us to kind of guide society into a greater world order, into this bigger vision. And so growing up in that faith was super beautiful because I would go through children's classes and Sunday schools that seemed to be very different from what my peers who were going through their religious education had, because what we did is, as children, we started by learning all of the manifestations of God, some of their stories. We learned about, Zoroaster, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, all of the above. And then also the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, which is Baha'u'llah. So we learned all of their stories and their messages. We read from all different religious texts, and saw the value in all of it. And actually, I said I was born into the Baha'i faith, but you actually can't be in the same way that in some religions you can be born into the faith, and then you're born into a Christian family, and then you can get baptized as a baby, and then you are a Christian. In the Baha'i faith, you actually can't become an official Baha'i until you're at the age of 15, because one of the major principles of the Baha'i faith is this idea of independent investigation of the truth. And so that each individual is responsible for, the parents are responsible for their child's soul, but along that, they should be guiding them through this independent investigation of their own truth and their own path of service. And so I was always being guided by my parents, but never being told this is what you should or should not believe. Simply that, when it comes time, if this is what you believe in, then by all means, you can declare yourself as a Baha'i, but if not, there was never any pressure on religion for me, which was a super beautiful way to grow up. And I think what happened for me a little bit, as the fellow panelists have been talking about, religion is never going to be linear and you can go one way or the other. For me, what happened was I kind of started taking these ideas for granted, that I believed them, but I didn't practice them really, because it was just like, yeah, that of course, that's what it is. Yeah, there's God, whatever, he's guiding us, whatever. It wasn't a big deal to me. It's just something that existed in the same way that, like, oh yeah, I drank water and that helped fuel me. But so I went away from the faith. I still called myself a Baha'i, but I didn't really practice or do any of the things that the Baha'is are called to do. And then as I got really into college, I think is when I became very firm, much more firm. I will say, like, firmness, goes through different waves in my life. But I really started to reimagine these ideas as if I were coming from it as someone who had never seen it before. And when I started doing that and started learning it from all the people that you come into contact with when you are first in college, I started realizing that this is actually like a revolutionary message. And like, this is actually something that is, even just the idea of religion is quite an amazing, monumental thing. And it's not something to be taken for granted. And so now I've been a lot more engaged with the community, the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i community is really engaged in a lot of grassroots activities. We do a lot with children's classes and junior youth spiritual empowerment programs, study circles for adults where we're able to study materials together from all different faiths and backgrounds and just learn from one another. And I think that it's been a really grounding force for me as I move through my education, as well as, I just started law school this year. So having this kind of really crazy, tumultuous time in my life, but being able to stay grounded, I think really gives me, it really helps me throughout my education. So it's been a very powerful force.
Thank you so much. Arnett, I don't have a question for you. Wanted to do the same thing with you because I want to leave it to the other folks that are listening. So I'm going to move on this time to the last panelist, and that is a person from the LDS community, and I don't think I have his name. Someone can share that with me, please.
Grant Williams.
Grant Williams. I'm sorry, I probably missed the memo. Thank you so much. Grant, are you available to us? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Go right ahead with your faith journey, your story, please.
Of course. Okay, well, first off, I just want to thank all the other panelists for everything that they've shared. I was like, I don't know, just enthralled, like super interested in everything that they had to share. So I want to thank you all for, I don't know, just being willing to open up, be vulnerable, and tell your life stories. I'm all ears. I love it. So a little bit about me. My name is Grant Williams. I am from Chandler, Arizona. I currently live in Boston, Massachusetts. So I'm envying the nice weather you guys enjoy. I, like you mentioned, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A little bit about like my faith journey. I was born into this faith, so I've always been a part of this faith. And just a little bit about what I believe or what the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is all about. We are, of course, a Christian denomination, right? We believe in Jesus Christ. His name is in the title of our church. I don't know, I think for me growing up, I really loved everything that I was taught, in church. We would go to church every Sunday, have Sunday school, and there's all sorts of activities during the week in high school. I had like seminary, so that was like an additional hour of just like gospel study. Was able to read the Bible and read some other scriptures that we believe in, and was just always impressed by the values that were instilled in me of loving my neighbor and the knowledge that God really does answer our prayers. He listens to us and he wants to help us out in our lives. So I definitely viewed my religion as a big part of my identity, as I'm sure is the same for a lot of the other panelists as well. And something really, unique about Arizona is that there's like a significant population of members of my faith in Arizona. I grew up in Chandler, like I mentioned, and I don't think that there's like a billion members of my faith in Chandler. There's probably more in like Mesa and Gilbert. But that was something I really did appreciate, was having like a community of people with similar values and similar standards. But personally, I'm really grateful that I was able to grow up in an area where it's also, very diverse, and I had exposure to people with a lot of different backgrounds and faith, just like, I don't know, different faiths as well. So I guess kind of talking a little bit about my faith journey. I think it was in high school that I really began to, I don't know, seek out what I truly felt, really trying to figure out myself and reconcile a lot of maybe questions that I had. I honestly, I think people can say like, oh, my beliefs were challenged. I think that, of course, living in like a pluralistic society, like other people around you are obviously going to have different perspectives. So you're going to have your beliefs challenged. But I think in my case, as a freshman and sophomore in high school, I really was like, I was the person challenging my faith. Like I was just kind of, I don't know, trying to figure out how we could reconcile maybe some of my own political perspectives with my religious perspectives. And I want to, I don't know, maybe just give voice to something that Evanna shared. I really loved when she said, she knew all these things that she was taught in the Baha'i faith, that she kind of had a good like academic knowledge of it, but maybe those truths weren't internalized necessarily for a period of her life. Sorry if I'm totally just like putting words in your mouth, but that's at least a little bit of what I felt. I was seminary president. I was like very active in my church congregation, and I definitely did believe in God. And I did believe, in my faith, but I felt like I knew more than I felt. Like I very much knew the tenets of my faith, and I was very familiar with the Bible and the Book of Mormon and the concepts of, I don't know, just personal revelation and kind of the history of my church. But I was really looking to kind of develop a closer relationship with God and have more of a steady, sturdy foundation for myself. And I remember my junior year of high school just really grappling with this subject of reconciliation, of looking at maybe certain things about church history that I didn't understand, maybe different verses in the Bible, certain I don't know, just certain statements from church officials. And I was really struggling to come up with good answers on different subjects. And I being someone who loves school, I wanted answers to everything. And kind of the idea of faith at times was a little bit challenging. But I just remember kind of really reflecting and really pondering and praying and reading the scriptures and really going to God, wrestling with God over some of my concerns, and just feeling a lot of peace, feeling this overwhelming sense of peace that what I was engaged in really was something constructive, not just for myself, but for the greater community. And I recognize that, yeah, I don't know all the answers to everything ever, but that's really not the objective of my life. I personally believe that I'm here on this earth to be tested. It's not meant to be easy, and there is always the question of faith, but something that has always, given me comfort in my life is just knowing that, God really is my loving Heavenly Father. He's someone that is with me every step of the way, and he wants me to be happy, right? He doesn't want me to be confused. He's always going to be guiding me, and I can turn to him for answers to my questions. And as I've, kind of walked into the darkness, I've seen the light kind of come inch by inch. And that's something I'm really grateful for. So I want to be sensitive to time. I wish I was looking at how much time I have. I should have set a timer, but I want to talk a little bit too about my experience serving a mission for my church. So I think that this is something not unique to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but it is something I guess like we're known for, right? The idea of young men and women kind of setting aside 18 months to 2 years of their lives to travel to another part of the world and just to kind of proselytize, to share, their beliefs with other people. So towards the end of my senior year, I made the decision that I wanted to serve a mission. Honestly, it really was not convenient. I had to like turn down a few different scholarships, and I had to defer applications to a lot of different schools. And, it was definitely a choice that I made of my own volition. I wasn't about to go and set aside 2 years of my life for something that I wasn't like 100% sure on. And I lived in Los Angeles for 2 years, and it really was like the most transformative experience of my life. I at first was very intimidated by the prospects of just like talking to random people. I didn't like the idea of like ever coming across as a salesman. I just hated that. I like really was not comfortable with that idea. But as I began like just being a missionary, living in Los Angeles, serving the Spanish speaking community there, I realized that like my role as a missionary was not to like sell anything. I wasn't giving elevator pitches to anybody. I was really just there to help other people and to answer questions if people had them, right? I was a guide of sorts, right? I wasn't there to convince anybody. I was there to inform people about what I believed and invite them to turn to God to find their own answers to their own questions. And my mission was honestly so incredibly impactful for me. And I just really loved it so much. So I came home from a mission in July of this year. So I've been home for a few months now. I wrote a little book about my experience in Los Angeles. It's kind of a compilation of a lot of different journal entries from that time in my life. And I just very quickly, I want to talk a little bit about my experience, in university on campus. It sounds like, all the other panelists as well are students. And I think universities are, I don't know, there's a certain group of people in the United States that would criticize universities for being, hugely secular and maybe antagonistic towards religion. My experience, I think my particular university really has made interfaith a very important pillar of learning. And I've been honestly impressed with like the university and the institution and their ability to protect religion and encourage religious discussion and discourse. But I certainly have at times, with peers and classmates, seen some individuals maybe look down at religion as something a little bit of almost like folklore, look down on religion, and maybe just view it as a little antiquated or dated out of times. And I think I've had to kind of just evaluate my loyalties, right? Evaluate that I choose to stand up for like what I believe in, even when it may be ridiculed by other people, and it's not always convenient. But I think it really has been an awesome opportunity for me to keep myself grounded and just make sure that I understand who I am, right? That I'm willing to stand up for what I believe in. And one last thing, I think that this has been a really, I don't know, just a neat experience for me now living in a city and living at a school where there aren't many members of my faith. I have maybe a little bit more of an idea of what it might be like to be a member of a less represented faith. I think growing up in Arizona, there are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I didn't usually feel very out of place or underrepresented. But now living in Boston, it's a little bit of a different story, and it just gives me more perspective to what it might be like to be Hindu or to be Baha'i or to be Muslim. And I honestly don't know what that's like, but still, I just think it's so important that we recognize, the challenges other people face. So that's all I wanted to share. I'm sorry, I think you were muted. Okay.
Excuse me. Thank you, Grant. And I know the whole group is appreciative of all the panelists this evening. And we already have questions in the chat. So let's start with, first we have a thank you from, I can't pronounce the name, Vastu. Says thank you to so inspiring. And so the first question that was before that, thank you, is from, do I see a name? Oops, I lost it. Go back up and see if I see, there we go. This is from Rodney Ross, and he'd like to know to all the panelists, so let's start back with the beginning, the first speaker. Did you have a conversion event in your journey, or was it a process over time? Did you have a conversion event in your journey, or was it a process over time? And let's start with our first, I think it was Johnny.
Yes, and well, I would really have to answer both, honestly. I think it kind of goes along with what both Evanna and Grant were speaking about earlier, which is the difference between, you know, knowing something or believing something and actually living it out and, you know, practicing those values. So I think in the same sense, you know, I had a slow journey and the slow conversion process as I continued to learn more and more about Islam. I always describe it like this because there, you know, to this day, some people would ask like, well, why did you stop? Like, why did you stop being this or that and choose to become a Muslim instead? And I said, well, I didn't really stop being anything else. The transition from being a pluralist to being a Muslim for me was just making the Muslim part of me more whole and more authentic. But I still cherish things I learn about in other religions, and oftentimes will incorporate ritual or some story into my own practice, into my own cosmology, if I find that it helps me in my relationship with God or just trying to be a better person. So in that sense, you know, I think I'm still a pluralist, but I do know that the long, slow conversion part was because the more I learned about some religions, I would find things that I loved and other things that I would say, okay, well, if I were this religion, I would have to make that work for me. I would have to find a way to interpret that myself so that I could, you know, really fully embody that. And with Islam, I found the more I learned, I often had the opposite feel. I thought I was, all right, now I'm going to learn about something that's going to be, make me feel like this is potentially, you know, a problematic worldview, perhaps, because of some things that I'd been exposed to when I was younger. And then I would learn the actual authentic truth of the tradition from its origins and from its scripture. And I would find, oh, well, none of the bad things I thought I might find are here. Instead, I found something that's lovely and beautiful. So in that way, I was always being drawn closer and closer to becoming a Muslim while I was learning about different religions. But I did have a conversion experience as well. I rarely talk about it because I think people kind of find it to be a very odd story. But I did have a specific conversion moment as well, which involved witnessing a light and sitting under a tree and being in the presence of Christ. So I had a very, what one might describe as mystical experience and encounter when I was, I think, probably 19 years old, maybe 19 or so. So that was also very profound for me and definitely kind of the hinge on which the rest of my life has turned. So.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Our next person, Surabhi. The same question to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would actually say my answer to whether there was a specific event or a process over time would be none of the above. And the reason I say this is because, like I mentioned earlier, Hinduism is, in my experience, more of a philosophy than a religion. So there isn't a moment where someone says, I am now a Hindu, but instead people can be parts of different religions or non-religious and still take parts of the Hindu philosophy. So personally, though I was born into the Hindu religion, that doesn't necessarily make me a strict Hindu, but I found that I align best with the Hindu beliefs and the Hindu scriptures. So in one sense, I can say that over time, I became closer with the religion. However, I wouldn't say there was one moment or over time I converted myself into this religion because in the future, I may consider other religions, I may consider other philosophies, but I can still take parts of this philosophy and apply it to my life. And anyone can do the same without defining themselves by this religion.
Thank you. Evanna, I think is next. Same question. Process or special time?
Yeah, so I think for me, personally, it's been more of a journey, and a journey that I'm still on. Yeah, there have been moments in my life where I've had actually certain experiences that, like Johnny shared, about different kinds of I don't know what to call those moments, but I'm sure many of us have them and are aware of, when we're like just very, very aware of the presence of God. And I view those as more so, rather than a conversion event, I view those as more so moments of confirmation in this journey that I'm on. So I would say that it's a process over time, and one that I'm continuing to be open to and just learn from others and their own journeys and their own process.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our last person, Grant, did we ask you that? Did we get an answer from you for that one?
Not yet, but I'd be happy to respond.
All right.
I'll be really quick, really brief. One of my favorite verses in the scriptures, it's actually in the Book of Mormon. I have it in Spanish, but I'll translate for y'all. It just says, "I will give I will give to the children of men line upon line, precept upon precept, a little here and a little there." And I feel like that has been my experience. By and large, is the idea of it's a journey, right? It's like line upon line. I've learned more, and I've gained different spiritual experiences that have guided me in my life. My faith, we believe in the idea of personal revelation, like asking ye shall receive, knocking it shall be opened unto you. Just the idea that if you have a question, you really can't expect that God will answer you. And I know that I've had some really profoundly spiritual experiences in my own life, but something I've realized is that in the same way, you can't expect to just like brush your teeth once a year like really well and like have it work out fine. You kind of do need to be seeking out moments of meditation, moments of study, and be seeking out those. You have to fill up your spiritual gas tank frequently. So I feel like my experience has been a lot of small spiritual experiences that were really meaningful to me, kind of over time, that have developed to a certain reservoir for me. When I am feeling down, I can think back on those different experiences. So more of a process.
Thank you. Thank you. More of a process, you say. All right. So we have kind of 4 different versions there. Thank you so much. We have another question here. It's someone is asking, in what ways do you think young people can contribute to multi-religious and intergenerational cooperation? And secondly, why is interfaith harmony important to you? Do you see this chat as well, panelists? Are you seeing the chat? Okay, cool. So you've got it. Let's start with Grant, since you ended that last one.
Yes. Okay. So I big fan of pluralism personally. I believe that we can all coexist and really have our own, I don't know, our own perceptions of reality and respect other people's beliefs as well. One of my favorite classes that I actually take at school is called Faith and Fiction. So it's about religious history in the United States through the lens of literature. So we've read like 7 different novels of different individuals and from various like faith traditions. We read American Dervish, Go Tell on the Mountain, The Romance Reader, Damnation of Theron Ware, just a lot of different books that highlighted various faith traditions. And my class, there's just 12 of us, but we represent a lot of different, states, I don't know, gender, sexual orientations, religions, we all have our own unique stories and backgrounds. But I think one of my biggest takeaways from that class was just the importance of I don't know, really seeking to understand another person before seeking to agree with them, right? My objective in having a conversation with somebody else, whenever there is a point of possible contention or disagreement, it's not to get the other person to agree with me, it's for me to understand the other person. You know, something that you run across in literature is oftentimes books are written almost in opposition to like church and religious authority, right? Some of the
Oh, say it again,
American
what the
classics,
message said.
some of the American classics, right? They are critical of religious authority and oftentimes
When was this done?
call religion oppressive. And I think what we learned, and what I learned in that class, is that, you know, maybe to an outsider, some religious creed or religious belief of another organization, another institution may seem oppressive to us, or we may struggle to understand it. But it's so important that we don't immediately, you know, criticize another faith before we even seek to understand it. We also have to recognize that for some people, you know, what they choose to do with their own lives really does bring them purpose. To them, it's not restrictive, it's not hateful, it's not anything. It's really something that brings them clarity and purpose in their lives. So I think just that idea of seeking to understand has been something I really appreciate about interfaith dialogue and discourse.
Okay, thank you, Grant. It looks like you answered the second question a little bit as well. How do you see your relationship with people of other religions? So I think you had that. What did you hit on for the contributing to multi-religious? I missed that. Intergenerational cooperation. Did you cover that?
I don't think I did, but I don't know if any of the other panelists perhaps want to talk about that, about intergenerational
Let's go to them.
work.
And if we have more time, we'll come back. Is that good? Okay, we'll go to Evanna. We're going backwards now. And these questions are kind of close. So you might be able to answer those at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
these are beautiful questions. I think there are many ways that young people and old people and all people can contribute to multi-religious and intergenerational cooperation. I think young people, we've seen youth be at the forefront of many social movements. And I think that's super valuable. And, you know, youth are put in a very specific position to be able to help their communities. And I think that we really need to tap into that energy and drive that youth do bring to their communities. Specific ways that people can become involved in this. I think it will vary so much depending on the specific community. And that can be even, you know, Johnny mentioned that he's living in Chandler and I'm in Tempe. And although we're 15, maybe 20 minutes, like our communities may be very different. And so I think there's a quote from the Baha'i faith that says, be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements. And so for me, what I think is just that first part, being anxiously concerned with the age that we live in and with the people around us. And so I think the answer to that, like I said, is just, it can be anything, but I think really being involved in your community. And I think the first step is just to make friends with people and just know the people around you and know who is struggling and what they're struggling with, whether it be related to religion or not. Maybe they're struggling financially and there's something that you can do to help. Because, you know, multi-religious and intergenerational cooperation doesn't begin with religion or generation necessarily. It begins with like the connection of souls. So I think that is the best way for me personally. And I think that is also why interfaith harmony is really important, because ultimately all religions talk about this greater vision that, you know, the creator or God or whatever it is called, has for us, and this unity that can exist within humanity and between each other, and also not just individually, but then that expands to our communities, that expands to greater institutions, and then that expands globally. So I think the only way that we are able to achieve such a lofty goal that's given to us by many different religious beliefs and backgrounds is through this connecting of souls. And so you have to be willing to meet people where they're at, and you have to be open to people meeting you where you are at as well. And so if you really want to contribute to this unity, and it sounds kind of like fluffy and like mystical, of like unification of humankind, but like we can take really practical steps and think about like, okay, what am I dedicating my life? Like, what is my career choice? And what are the reasons behind that career choice? And so, and then thinking about the people around you within that career, and thinking about, okay, how can we create harmony within this space right here? And so I think that's why interfaith harmony is important, is because it's ultimately going to contribute to this greater goal, while also creating like a very beautiful space in the moment. And so I think that bleeds into that question of, how do you see your relationship with people of other religions? I think that like we're all, one humankind. And so people have different paths of service, and whatever path of service that one may take, I think is beautiful. And I am so happy to support people on their path of service, whatever, wherever that path comes from, and whatever is guiding them, as long as it is, as long as we can work toward a unified goal. I think I have there's another quote in the faith that talks about how each individual is created noble. And so I really try to see other people, regardless of their religious background, from a stance of nobility. And what would that look like if like we each interacted with other people as if they were noble? So that's how I try to see people of other religions.
Thank you so much. We're coming down to the wire. We're about at 7:45, I think. Surabhi, if you can give an answer to those two questions together. I see great comments coming in, great presentations from Ed Casper. So we are excited, and we are learning together, and we are much appreciative of your input and your presentation. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you, thank you, thank you. As we continue, we may have to do a phase 2, but I want to at least get the questions in. So please make your questions just a little bit shorter, and then if we have more time to expound, we can come back. How's that sound, everybody?
Sounds good.
Okay, at least Surabhi, and then Johnny, if you can answer those two questions kind of concisely, we appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'll try to make this as quick as possible.
Okay.
But I definitely
Don't make it too quick. We want to hear from you, so thank you.
Definitely. I have to agree with Evanna in that getting involved with our community is one of the best ways to contribute to multi-religious and intergenerational cooperation. There's so many people I've met through volunteering or community service that has taken me so far in understanding other religions and people who are not really involved with religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from another perspective, it's pretty important that in our academics and in the way we raise children, that we bring them to be aware of the fact that there are multiple religions. And the reason I say this is because when I was growing up, much of my education that did focus on religion in school was primarily focused around Christianity, which I think is extremely important. But I think it's also just as important to highlight that there are other religions with either similar or different beliefs. And by opening this up to children as they're younger, this allows them, and what I wish had happened for me, to spark this conversation earlier in their lives and understand how different parts of the world understand different religions and understand the world. And the best example I can give of this right now is one of the classes I'm taking, which is called The Human Event, where we analyze ancient texts. And many of these texts are religious. So for example, we read the Bhagavad Gita, we read the Quran, we read parts of the Bible, and we analyze it together as a class with people of many different religions. And it was so eye-opening for me because not only did we analyze the religions, but we found so many similarities. For example, I noticed that within many of the religions we read about, non-attachment or staying away from the material world and focusing on furthering our own happiness and our own development was a common theme throughout all of the religions. And that's something I hadn't really considered before. And so going into why interfaith harmony is important to me, finding these similarities is really important, but also understanding and recognizing what the different religions offers allows us to understand why people might make certain decisions and see people from other perspectives and from their own life story. So for example, when I don't eat certain meats, many people ask me why they do that. And when I can tell them about my religion and why I, for example, don't eat beef, they're able to see it from my point of view and understand my decision process and also what my background is like. And that's so important for cooperation and decision-making for any kind of community.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I just want to take a minute. We have the next question. We're going to do a Johnny real quick, and then I want to mention some of these comments that are in the chat. So Reverend Larry Fultz, you have a question. How does your faith, I'm sorry, Johnny first, and then we'll come to that question.
I'm glad it's a good transition, because I was going to just go ahead anyway and say I'll answer those two questions, but I wanted to actually touch on the second part of Larry's question there first anyway, because it caught my eye when I was looking at the chat.
Okay.
So as far as, and I'll be real brief and just kind of to the point, how difficult is it to see yourself as a minority today among my peers as being a religiously connected person? I don't really see it as difficult. I don't even really notice a distinction. I honestly feel like that same trend that people notice of a sort of more secularized or perhaps spiritual but not religious generation that I'm a part of, I feel that same way. I think I've just made an intentional choice to continue identifying with a label and a community. I actually think it's more difficult being a minority as a young person in religious spaces that are frankly full of my elders. And that's just being as direct and honest as I can. I'm very often not given a voice or an equal seat at the table because I'm a younger person. And so I'm sort of tokenized, or I'm invited into a space to show that young people are present. But then when decisions are made, or when questions of leadership arise, that maybe is suddenly I don't feel as important to a group setting. And so I've experienced that. And I think that also is sort of my transition into answering those other two questions that other folks have answered. What young people can do to help contribute to multi-religious and intergenerational cooperation is participate. Because if we don't, it's not really going to happen, especially if you just consider how society works and like sustainability of human cultures and ideas. We have to share it with our young people, and they have to propagate that. So I think that our goal is to reach out to other young people and share with them why interfaith literacy and dialogue is so important, because it's really a skill that's about much more than religion. Religion, take it or leave it, but being able to work with people who believe fundamentally different things that matter a great deal, and still being able to cooperate together on shared goals and find common ground is probably the most valuable skill I can think of. I mean, what could be more employable in a career setting? And I think a lot of young people look at interfaith as being about religion, when really it should be about inclusion and tolerance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me take a quick minute and ask Reverend Larry and or Ann if you all are able to capture the chat in case we have to end before we get all the questions answered. Are we able to capture the chat?
Well, I think it's critically important at this time to honor our time frame for our participants and our viewers,
Okay.
to keep it at an hour length.
Okay.
What I am impressed with is the articulation of these young people, their ability to express their faith in a meaningful and attractive way. I am deeply impressed with each one of you. I don't think when I was your age, I had that capacity at all. In fact, I wonder if I still have that capacity. It's a pleasure to be able to have young people speak their faith and their journey. And I think we all resonate with every one of you in terms of your faith journey. There have always been questions and times when we wonder. But you have made us better people today, this evening, by listening to you. And Grant, I wanted to tell you that your school, Harvard, was founded by the Puritans, as you well know, that came to America seeking religious freedom. That's why it's open freedom there at Harvard still, for you to be able to seek asylum if you need to. But it's wonderful to have these young people here, and the great viewers that we've had, and the fantastic questions. I think, Helen, we've got to do this again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Totally agree. Totally agree. We have 15 more questions and accolades and attaboys and attagirls. I should say women and men actually, but it's great. It's exciting. I am really, I feel chill bumps coming up and down my arms and my spine just to hear, as Larry said, Reverend Larry, how you've articulated. It took me about 10 years to get to that point, and I'm still not there, but it's so appreciative. So I will leave it up to the director. We can capture the questions, and you want to share how we'll be able to answer those and get back to our panelists? I mean, are we going to do a white paper or something that comes from this? Dear Larry?
Well, I think that you've seen the questions that you have, and so if our panelists want to write answers to them and send them to us, we'll certainly put those on our Facebook and on our website. So if you want to do that, feel free to answer those questions and send them to Ann or myself, Larry at azifm.org, or at Ann at azifm.org, either one. But again, thank you so much.
Before you close, panelists, thank you again from me personally. I have two questions I'd like you all to consider when you respond to the others, and that is this. Number one, what are the things you like about your faith, and what drew you to it? What kept you there? And I'll send that out to you, hopefully through Ann. And another one I thought was really critical, and I think one of you might have addressed it, was, did you have any doubts about your faith, and how did you handle it? So that was some questions we as Interfaith members wanted to ask. So hopefully we'll be able to contact you folks and get those questions to you. And I'll turn it back over to Larry.
Thanks again for coming. Thanks again, panelists. Johnny, Surabhi, Evanna, and Grant, thank you so much for your information and your spirit and articulation. God bless you. Have a great evening.
You guys were great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks, everybody. It was wonderful.
Great job.
Dress
Take care.
warm.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Great job, Helen. Thank
And
you
thank
too.
There you go. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Helen. Great
Hey,
job.
Grant, do you know Jackson Washburn?
Sorry, I don't know.
You know what? I know of him. I
But we
don't
met
think
for the
I-
first time about 20.
We don't have to hook up with him.
And you still have the same.
Yes,
spirit.
I think I've seen him once before. I need to like message him.
What did you say, Merrick?
That we met for the first time 25 years ago, because I used to live in Arizona, and you still have the same spirit as you had 25 years ago. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you, Merrick. We appreciate that. Where are you living now?
In Colorado, I'm in Lakewood, Colorado.
Oh, Lakewood, Colorado. Well, thanks for joining us. My goodness.
I will write you some comments about reflections on today's
We
workshop.
would appreciate that. We'd love that very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
All
And
right.
thank you, Larry, for organizing this as well through the.
Well, I
agency.
really didn't do this. This was Ed and Sid's and Helen and the
Ann.
educational committee and Ann. So I really didn't have a lot to do with it all. I just got scared at the end, making sure that everybody was on board.
It worked out.
Yeah.
No, everybody was fantastic. They just was a great group of people.
Yeah, super duper.
Absolutely.
Is that Jorge over there that I see still here with us? Must not be there.
And-
All right, guys, have a great evening.
All right.
And
Right, Larry,
there's
we'll catch you
actually a
later.
sequel to this.
Take care,
so that's
everybody.
great. Yeah.
I'll talk to you, Ann. You able to get all the questions out of the chat?
Yes, we'll save those and get them shared. You bet, Helen. Thank
I'll
you.
send- Okay, and you saw my 3 questions. You have that. Have a blessed evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Helen.
You too.
Thank you.
You did a
Bye-bye.
great job.
And wait till the next one.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.